Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. This is where we take the sources you send us, all the articles, the research, and we really just try to get to the core of it all.
And our mission today is a big one. We're looking at what you could really call one of the great miracles of the ancient world, architecturally, economically.
And hydraulically.
Exactly. We're talking about the city of Petra.
That's right. We are diving deep into this absolutely spectacular rock-cut city set so dramatically in the sandstone cliffs of what is now southern Jordan. Most of us, we know it as the Rose City.
A name it got from the incredible color of the sandstone. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, of course, and one of the new 7 wonders of the world.
But the thing is, that famous facade, the one that everyone pictures, that's just the surface.
It really is. And we're going beneath that surface today. The people who built this, the Nabataeans, they didn't call it Petra. That's Greek for rock. To them, it was known as Raqmu.
Or Raqmu in their language, Nabataean Aramaic.
Right. And our mission, really, is to unpack the central miracle of Raqmu. How did this city, this thriving metropolis, manage to not just survive, but actually dominate from the middle of a barren desert?
So we're going to get into the history, the mind-bending architecture, and the one thing that drove all of its prosperity, the hidden power source.
Water. It all comes down to water. It's the ultimate story of human ingenuity against a brutal climate.
How an ancient people basically industrialized the desert.
Okay, so let's unpack the timeline. When I think of Petra, my mind just immediately jumps to the Nabataeans, carving the Treasury in the 1st century AD.
Right, that's the iconic image.
But the sources are really clear that this area has roots stretching back thousands of years before the Nabataean kingdom was even a concept.
Oh, absolutely. The longevity of this specific spot as a place for human settlement is, well, it's staggering. We have evidence of organized settlements from the Neolithic period.
Neolithic, what are we talking, like 7,000 BC? Around then, yeah. Incredibly early. This is when agriculture is just getting started globally, and you have farmers settling in a place called Beta, just a few kilometers north of where Petra would eventually be.
So from the very beginning, people recognized this area was viable.
Viable and strategic. Even in the Bronze Age, this region was on the map. It shows up in ancient records.
Like imperial records.
Exactly. Egyptian campaign accounts, the Amarna letters. It's mentioned under different names like Pel, Sela, or Ser. It just shows that the routes running through here, as difficult as they were seen as essential.
But the first group to really establish the kind of infrastructure that would define the area, that was the Edomites, right? During the Iron Age.
That's right, from about 1200 to 600 BC. The Edomites were the first to truly integrate with the topography here.
What do you mean by integrate?
Well, they looked at the specific configuration of the mountains, these deep canyons, and realized it could be used as more than just a fortress. It could be a natural water reservoir.
Yeah.
They weren't just passing through. They were occupying the high ground. We have archaeological evidence of an Edomite site at El Biara, dating to the 7th century BC at the latest.
So the Edomites basically proved the concept. They showed that you could store water here.
They proved the concept. And in doing that, they transformed this challenging spot into a safe harbor. It immediately became a crucial stopping point for merchants.
A rare safe spot for traders carrying, valuable goods?
Very valuable. Wines, olive oil, and especially wood, which is hard to come by. It was a vital waypoint, but it wasn't a capital city yet. Not by a long shot.
And then come the Nabataeans, and they take that waypoint concept and just explode it into a global powerhouse.
The Nabataean Revolution, starting around the 4th century BC, changes everything. They were originally nomadic Bedouin tribes from the Arabian Desert.
And we're pretty sure about that origin now.
Modern scholarship is very firm on it. Linguistic, archaeological evidence all points to them being a northern Arabian tribe. The old theories about them being Aramean have been, pretty much rejected.
So they settle down and make Petra Raqmu their capital in the 2nd century BC. And this is where their real genius comes into play.
This is the critical insight.
Yeah.
The fact that they were desert nomads wasn't a disadvantage. It was their greatest strength.
Why so?
They were already masters of arid survival. They understood the wadis, the hidden springs, the climate in a way that their enemies, like the Greeks or later the Romans, just couldn't.
It gave them an incredible home field advantage.
An almost impenetrable one.
Yeah.
They could defend their kingdom, maintain secret supply lines, and withstand sieges far more effectively than anyone else.
And that mastery of the environment put them in the perfect position to control the ancient world's supply chains.
It did. They basically put a highly efficient, militarized toll booth on the most profitable trade routes of the day. They controlled the caravan routes, especially the incredibly lucrative incense trade.
Incense being frankincense and myrrh.
Frankincense and myrrh, which were, they were the oil of the ancient world, used for everything from religious rituals to medicine.
And these routes all funneled through Petra.
They controlled the paths leading to Gaza and the Mediterranean, up to Damascus, down to Aqaba on the Red Sea, and east towards the Persian Gulf. The revenue they generated from this was just astronomical.
And it all hinged on their ability to provide the one thing no one else could in that desert.
Reliable, managed water.
It's fascinating, too, that the original name, Raqmu, might actually be a clue to what they were famous for.
It's a beautiful piece of linguistic context. The historian Josephus, writing in the 1st century AD, said that the local Arabs in his day still called the city Raqim.
And the root of that word.
The Arabic root, Raqama, means to mark or to decorate. So it could be a very early reference to the city's most defining feature.
The decorated city.
The city of decorated, carved facades, literally standing out against the desert. A city whose identity was carved in stone, but whose entire economy was built on water and spice.
So once the Nabataeans consolidate their power, their rise seems almost meteoric. We get to the 1st century AD, and this is considered the golden age.
This is absolutely their zenith. Politically, culturally, economically, the sources estimate that Petra's population peaked at around 20,000 inhabitants.
20,000. You have to stop and think about that. Supporting 20,000 people in that environment it's a miracle of engineering in itself.
It is. It's a testament to just how successful their water management systems were. And it's during this period of incredible wealth that they construct their most iconic buildings.
Like Al-Khazneh, the Treasury.
The Treasury, yes, which, as you know, despite the name, wasn't actually a treasury.
Right. The consensus is that it was a mausoleum, a tomb.
Almost certainly a mausoleum, yes.
Yeah.
Probably for King Aretas I, who had a very long and prosperous reign. The sheer scale and the intricate Hellenistic detail, it was a statement of power and wealth.
But that native dynasty, that independence, it couldn't last forever. The shadow of Rome was getting longer.
Inevitably. The end of Nabataean independence came in 106 AD.
With the Emperor Trajan.
Yes. Rome annexed the kingdom under the command of Aulus Cornelius Palma Frontonianus. The Nabataean kingdom was absorbed and renamed Arabia Petraea.
But Rome didn't just absorb it and let it wither. They recognized its value, right?
Oh, immediately. They kept Petra as the provincial capital. And Roman rule, as it often did, brought a massive investment in infrastructure. The Pax Romana meant safer, better trade.
They built roads.
They built roads. First the Petro-Roman Road, and then the monumental Via Traiana Nova, built between 111 and 114 AD. This was a huge undertaking, a paved, organized highway system.
Was that more for military movement or for trade?
It was for both, but trade was paramount. And here's the clever part. The road followed the exact lines of the old successful Nabataean caravan routes.
So they weren't reinventing the wheel, they were just paving it.
They were paving it and protecting it with Roman legions. This revived trade and kept the money flowing through the region. So at first, Petra benefited hugely.
It even became something of an imperial showpiece.
Absolutely. The Emperor Hadrian himself visited in 130 AD. He granted the city the title Hadriani Petra Metropolis, which they then put on their coins. It was a huge deal.
And the Roman governor at the time even built his tomb there.
He did. Sextius Florentinus, he built this monumental mausoleum near the King's Wall tombs, which is a real sign of respect because that area had historically been reserved only for Nabataean royalty.
So it seems like everything is going great under Roman rule. But here's the question. By making trade so much easier and safer everywhere, did Rome accidentally undermine Petra's unique advantage?
That is the perfect way to put it, yes. That's exactly what happened. Rome standardized trade, but in doing so, they enabled growth elsewhere. And a major rival city begins to emerge. Palmyra. Further north, in modern Syria, it was on the edge of the desert, not hidden deep inside it.
So it offered a more direct, maybe easier route for the caravans?
A much more direct route. And as Palmyra grew, it started to pull all that valuable trade traffic away from Petra. Petra's whole advantage was being the necessary, secret, secure choke point.
Once other routes became secure under Roman protection, its remote location went from being an asset to a liability.
Precisely. The city's main reason for being was slowly being eroded.
And you can actually see this decline in the archaeological record, right? The source mentions they just stopped minting coins.
They did. Local coinage ends in the 3rd century. That's a huge red flag. It signals that the city's economic engine had seized up. Without that massive trade revenue, maintaining the complex water systems would have been incredibly difficult.
So the city didn't just disappear, it sort of faded.
It faded. It lingered on as a religious center. We have records of a major religious feast still being held there every year on December 25th, honoring their gods Dushara and Kabu. So cultural life persisted, but it was a shadow of its former self.
But the final catastrophic blow wasn't economic, it was environmental.
The ultimate disaster struck in 363 AD, a massive earthquake. It was part of a series of quakes that devastated the entire region.
And it didn't just knock down buildings.
It destroyed buildings, yes, but crucially, for a city built on water management, it crippled their hydraulic system. The dams, the cisterns, the conduits, they were broken.
So the artificial oasis just dried up.
It dried up, and when you take that away, survival on that scale becomes impossible. That earthquake accelerated Petra's slide into total obscurity.
Okay, so after that devastating earthquake, you'd think that would be the end of the story, but Petra still had, well, a surprising afterlife in the Byzantine period.
It really did. The city's institutional roots were so deep that even after the economic collapse and the earthquake, it actually served as the capital of the Byzantine province of Palestina III.
So it was still a seat of power, even if diminished.
A seat of power.
Yeah.
And we have this incredible find that proves life was still going on there well into the 6th century.
You're talking about the Petra papyri.
Exactly. Yeah, a discovery of 140 papyri in the ruins of a Byzantine church. And they're fascinating. They're mostly private legal contracts, land sales, marriage dowries, wills.
Everyday life.
The business of everyday life, dating from the 530s to the 590s. This shows people were still living there, managing property, almost 200 years after the big quake.
And we also see the city's religious identity shifting during this time.
We do. We see them physically repurposing the old structures. The urn tomb, one of those grand royal Nabataean tombs, was converted into a Christian church. It was consecrated around 447 AD.
So they were actively integrating the ancient city into their new Christian world. But even that presence eventually fades.
It does. By the late 7th century, it ceases to be a major bishopric. After the Muslim conquest of the region, Petra, already so damaged, just sort of vanishes from the historical record. It becomes a lost city.
Known only to the local Bedouin.
For almost 500 years, and only really reappears on the world stage, and even then, just briefly, during the Crusades.
The Crusaders saw its defensive value, I assume?
They did. They built a few fortresses there in the 12th century, holding the area until 1189. After they left, it was visited by the Mamluk Sultan Baybars, but for the Western world, it was basically a myth.
Which sets the stage for this incredible moment of rediscovery in 1812, and a story that's all about clever deception.
The central figure is the Swiss traveler, Johann Ludwig Burckhardt. An extraordinary man, he was fluent in Arabic, which was essential for getting around safely.
And he'd heard these rumors, these local legends of a dead city hidden in the mountains.
He had. He became obsessed with finding this rumored city, which the legend said contained the tomb of the prophet Aaron.
But he couldn't just walk in. The local tribes were extremely protective of the area.
So he had to be cunning. He disguised himself completely as a local, spoke only Arabic, and this is the brilliant part, he invented a pretext.
And the famous goat?
The famous goat. He claimed he had made a religious vow to sacrifice a goat at Aaron's tomb. This gave him a sacred, unimpeachable reason to demand access deep into the canyon.
He was a perfect cover story.
It worked. His local guide led him down the sick. He only had one day to explore, but when he saw the treasury and the tombs, he knew. He was certain he'd found the lost city of Petra.
And his writings, published after his death, just electrified Europe.
They really did. But it still took time for visual proof to get out. The first accurate drawings weren't made until 1828 by Léon de Laborde.
And then the artists started coming.
The artists came. David Roberts, the Scottish painter, in 1839, and later the American painter Frederick Edwin Church. His huge 1868 painting of the Treasury really brought the scale and majesty of Petra to the American public for the first time.
It's not until the 20th century that real archaeology begins, and that's when we start to confirm the science behind the Nabataean miracle.
Yes, people like Philip Hammond, an archaeologist who spent decades at Petra. He did crucial work connecting the local legends to the hydraulic reality.
There's that local story that Moses created Petra by striking the rock for water.
A beautiful legend, because it acknowledges that abundant water in this landscape was a miracle. But Hammond provided the scientific proof. He saw that the carved channels deep in the walls of the sick weren't just erosion.
They were engineered.
They were engineered. He found remnants of ceramic pipes inside them, proving they were part of a sophisticated system that fed water down from huge reservoirs and cisterns carved into the canyon rim.
So they were harvesting every last drop of rain and piping it into the city.
Every drop. This early research proved that the water infrastructure wasn't an afterthought. It was the entire foundation of Nabataean life and their economy.
So let's talk about that engineering. If water was the engine of Petra, the architecture was its spectacular chassis. And you have to start with the entrance, the Siq.
The Siq is just a phenomenal feature, both natural and man-made. It's this narrow, 2-kilometer-long gorge, and it wasn't carved by a river. It was formed by a tectonic split in the sandstone.
And it's incredibly narrow in places.
Only 3 or 4 meters wide. It's naturally defensive, forcing any potential invader into a single file line. But it also creates this incredible dramatic reveal when you finally emerge in front of the Treasury.
But the Nabataeans saw it as more than just a path.
Oh, much more. It was a primary water conduit. It naturally channeled rainwater down into the main valley. But they knew that also meant it channeled devastating flash floods.
So they had to control it.
They had to. So they built a massive diversion dam right at the entrance. A simple but brilliant piece of engineering.
How did it work?
It diverted the main force of a flash flood away from the walking path of the Siq and into a separate tunnel they carved into the rock, which then led to storage cisterns.
So they turned a deadly threat into a life-giving resource.
Exactly. They controlled nature, harvested the water, and stored it for droughts. This is how they created their artificial oasis. It's the real marvel of Petra.
The stunning facades are the artistic result of that engineering success, and the architectural style itself is this fascinating mix of cultures.
It is. It's overwhelmingly Hellenistic, which reflects the Greek cultural influences they were absorbing through their trade networks, especially from Alexandria in Egypt. Petra was a cosmopolitan city, and it wanted to look the part.
So let's zoom in on the star of the show, Al-Khazneh, the Treasury. What are we actually looking at architecturally?
Okay, so it's huge, 24 meters wide, 37 meters tall. It has features that are classic late Hellenistic design. You see the broken pediment, that's the triangular gable at the top that's split open in the middle.
Right.
And in that opening, you have a central tholos, a circular structure. And what's so unique is how it's blended with the natural rock. You have these 2 huge obelisks that seem to just grow right out of the cliff face above it all.
And the statues, the iconography, tell the story of their world.
It's a perfect summary.
Yeah.
Near the bottom, you have the Greek gods Castor and Pollux, who are protectors of travelers and trade. And on top of the tholos is a female figure, probably a combination of the Egyptian goddess Isis and the Greek goddess of good fortune, Tyche.
So it's a monument to safe travels and profitable trade.
Exactly what their kingdom was built on, which adds a layer of irony to that modern anecdote you hear about the bullet holes.
Yes, explain that.
The facade is covered in hundreds of bullet marks, especially around the big stone urn at the very top. For generations, local Bedouin believed that urn contained hidden treasure, and they would shoot at it, hoping to break it open and release the gold.
Wow, the myth of the treasury lived on in a very literal way.
It did. Now, if we move on to Petra's largest monument, Ad Deir, the monastery, it's even bigger.
How does it compare to the treasury in style?
It's even larger, 45 meters tall, 50 meters wide. It has similar Hellenistic elements like the broken pediment and the tholos, but it's simpler, more monumental. Some scholars see it as a more distinctly Nabataean take on the Greek style. It was dedicated to a deified king, Obotus I.
And its location is so remote, high up in the mountains, it must have been for very serious worship.
Absolutely. The interior is very plain, lit only by its massive 8-meter-high doorway. But outside, there's a huge flat plaza that they carved out of the mountain, specifically for large religious gatherings.
Now, if we come down from the high places into the city center, we learn about their public life. The theater, for example.
The theater is amazing. It could hold about 8,500 people, which gives you a sense of the population. And it's a great example of Nabataean pragmatism.
How so?
To build it, they cut the seats not only into the hillside, but they also carved right through several existing tombs. They sacrificed tombs to maximize seating capacity.
So public entertainment and funerary reverence were all mixed together.
All part of the fabric of daily life. They had poetry, drama, and gladiator fights, which were apparently very popular. But the theater was badly damaged in that 363 earthquake.
Another site that's changed our understanding of their daily life is the Petra Pool and Garden Complex.
Oh, this is a great story of archaeological reinterpretation. For years, everyone thought it was just a marketplace.
But it wasn't.
Not at all. Excavations revealed it was an elaborate formal garden with a huge swimming pool an island pavilion in the middle, and its own complex irrigation system. It showed they weren't just about survival, they were about luxury, creating a true green paradise.
And the main street, the colonnaded street, was the spine of that civic center.
It was. And it's unique because it was one of the few major structures that was actually built with blocks, not carved from the rock. The Romans later came in and added rows of columns, really stamping their mark on the city.
Okay, before we move on, we have to talk about the discovery that proved we still have so much to learn about Petra.
The 2016 discovery. It's just mind-blowing. Using satellite imagery and drones, archaeologists found a massive, previously unknown monumental platform.
How big are we talking?
It's huge, 184 by 161 feet. It's the second largest structure in all of Petra, after the monastery, and it dates way back to around 150 BC, near the beginning of their building boom.
And the weirdest part is its location.
It's completely separate from the main city center. It faces east, away from everything. It has this grand staircase leading up to a small building on top, which suggests some kind of ceremonial or maybe astronomical function.
But we have no idea what it was for.
Pure speculation at this point. It just proves that after 200 years of study, Petra is still holding on to some of its biggest secrets.
Let's shift a bit to the culture and religion of the Nabataeans, before Christianity became dominant in the region. What was their spiritual world like?
It was a very rich Arabian pantheon. Their main male god was Dushara, which means Lord of the Mountain. Very fitting for Petra.
And he was joined by female deities.
Yes, three main goddesses, Al-Uzza, Al-Lat, and Manat. And interestingly, they were often worshipped not as statues, but as beetles' sacred uncarved stones. It was a more abstract, aniconic form of worship.
And we're now learning that their religion was deeply connected to astronomy.
That's a really exciting area of new research. There's growing evidence that many of their most important structures, tombs, high places of sacrifice, were precisely oriented to align with the sunrise and sunset on the solstices and equinoxes.
So they were using the entire landscape as a sort of cosmic calendar.
Exactly. The architecture was integrated with the movements of the sun. It was very sophisticated, place-based theology.
Now, beyond the Nabataean pantheon, Petra holds this incredibly deep significance for the Abrahamic faiths, linked to Moses and his brother Aaron.
That tradition is ancient, going back at least to the historian Josephus. The region is strongly identified with the Exodus story, specifically the part where Moses strikes a rock and water comes gushing out.
Which is why the valley leading to Petra is called Wadi Musa.
The Wadi of Moses, yes.
Yeah.
And the connection to Aaron is even more tangible. His tomb is traditionally believed to be on top of Jabal Harun, Mount Aaron, which overlooks the whole site.
And there's physical evidence of that tradition being very old.
Very old. A church was built on the mountain in the 5th century to commemorate it. And incredibly, the Petra papyri we mentioned earlier specifically identify that church as the house of High Priest Aaron. It shows how revered that spot was across different faiths for centuries.
Which brings us to the modern day and the immense challenges Petra faces. The very love the world has for this place is also one of its biggest threats.
The pressure is enormous.
Yeah.
You have the threat of structural collapse of the monuments themselves. You have erosion from flash floods, a tragic echo of their ancient problems. And then you have this insidious internal weathering.
What?
It's called salt upwelling. Basically, moisture seeps into the porous sandstone, and as it evaporates, it leaves behind salt crystals that literally push the grains of rock apart from the inside. It's like the stone is exploding in slow motion.
And all of this is being accelerated by one thing.
Unsustainable tourism. Especially after it was named a new Seven Wonder in 2007. The numbers just skyrocketed. We're talking 1.2 million visitors in 2019 alone.
Managing that many people in such a fragile, ancient site must be a nightmare. And it's had profound social consequences for the local people.
This is a really important and difficult part of Petra's modern story, the forced resettlement of the indigenous Bedul Bedouin people.
These were the people who traditionally lived in the caves within Petra itself.
For generations, yes. And in 1985, to prepare for the UNESCO designation and to manage the site for tourism, the Jordanian government forcibly relocated them to a purpose-built village nearby.
So on one hand, it was to protect the site, but on the other, it displaced a community from their ancestral homes.
It's a classic unresolved tension between preservation and human rights. And then there's the other major ethical crisis that tourism has created, the one involving the working animals.
This is a really tough subject.
It is. The site is so large and rugged that it relies on hundreds of donkeys, horses, and camels to transport tourists. And organizations like PETA have released multiple videos documenting severe abuse.
Feeding, whipping.
Just terrible conditions. Animals work to exhaustion in the extreme heat. And it's a vicious cycle because the handlers are often under immense economic pressure themselves.
Has anything been done about it?
PETA reported that conditions hadn't improved much by 2020. They eventually stepped in and established what seems to be the only veterinary clinic in the area offering free care. But it highlights this painful conflict between the economic demands of tourism and basic animal welfare.
It's good to hear, though, that there's also a lot of positive, hands-on conservation work happening.
Oh, absolutely. There's been a massive international effort for decades, from restoring a key pillar on the Treasury back in the 50s to the full excavation and conservation of that Byzantine church in the 90s.
And they're still working on the big problems.
Constantly, there's ongoing work to rehabilitate the floor of the sick to better handle floodwater. And researchers are testing high-tech desalination techniques to try and stop that salt weathering on the tomb facades. The scale of the conservation effort is as monumental as the city itself.
Petra's journey from a lost city to a global icon has really cemented its place in our collective imagination. And you have to start with that one phrase that defined it for the English-speaking world.
John William Burgon's 1845 poem. He never even visited Petra, but he won a prize for it in Oxford. And it contains the line that everyone knows.
A rose-red city, half as old as time.
It's so evocative, it perfectly captured the romantic mystery of the place.
And if poetry made it famous in the 19th century, film made it an icon in the 20th.
No question. The 1989 film Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, using the Treasury as the hidden temple holding the Holy Grail, was a stroke of genius. It made Petra instantly recognizable to millions of people around the world.
It crystallized that image of adventure and ancient mystery.
It did, and it's appeared in other films, of course, The Mummy Returns, Transformers. It's also fully crossed over into video games and streaming series. It's part of the pop culture landscape now.
Now, I want to bring up a really surprising historical detail that shows the power Petra held, even when it was completely inaccessible.
This is the story of the Zionist youth movement's incursions in the 1950s.
Explain this. After Israel was established, Petra was across a hostile border in Jordan.
Right. And for some young Israelis, making a dangerous, illegal cross-border trek through the desert to see Petra became this ultimate test of courage, a kind of rite of passage.
A highly dangerous island.
Extremely dangerous. Several of these young adventurers were killed by Jordanian patrols over the years, but the mystique of the Red Rock, as they called it, was so powerful.
It even inspired a famous song.
It did. In 1958, a songwriter named Haim Heffer wrote a very popular ballad called Hasel Hadom, the Red Rock, about one of these treks that ended in tragedy. It just shows the incredible cultural and emotional pull this place had, even from a distance.
So after this whole deep dive, what does it all confirm about the absolute genius of the Nabataeans?
Their core achievement was just this brilliant fusion of strategic thinking and environmental mastery. They didn't just carve beautiful facades into rock. They took a hostile desert canyon and engineered it into a defensible, wealthy, cosmopolitan metropolis.
They didn't just survive in the desert.
They industrialized it. They took its biggest threats, the aridity, the flash floods, and turned them into their greatest assets. That hydraulic genius is what paid for everything else. The Treasury, the Monastery, those are the magnificent symbols of the profits they made from controlling water and trade.
And that's why Petra still captivates us. But its story is still unfolding, and it's a story of conflict.
A conflict between our desire to experience these places and the need to preserve them.
I think the sources really leave us with a challenging paradox to think about, one that connects the past to the present.
It does. We've seen that Petra has always been a place of intense desire. From the local Bedouin shooting at the Treasury hoping for gold, to the modern ethical crises driven by mass tourism. So here's the question to consider.
Go on.
Given this constant escalating conflict between preservation and profit, how should we today balance honoring this incredible architecture while protecting the entire landscape, the stone, the people, and the animals, from the very love that threatens to destroy it?
The paradox of loving a heritage site into ruin.
That's it, exactly.
A vital question and a perfect place to end. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Raqmu, the Rose Red City.